Hi everyone, I'm 𝐻𝐵𝐻, and this is another episode of Living Enlightened Every Day. And today I have with me a very special guest. His name is Jorge Perez. He is the author of the book, The Shut the Heck Up Method. I'm going to let you figure out what that is. The title and the link will be in the show notes, but he reminds us that we can silence our way to the life of our dreams. It's true. It's true. It's always been true, and it's true now. Jorge gives such a wonderful and unique voice to ancient practices and how relevant they are to our lives right here, right now. He is not just an author, but an accomplished Hollywood agent and film producer based out of Miami, and he has over 20 years of experience in the personal development field. He has an incredible story to share, so stay tuned. Let's hear it. So welcome, Jorge. How are you doing today?
I'm so great. How are you?
I'm so glad you're here. I just wanted to let people know because it's such an unusual thing that you and I have met recently. That's how I found out about you. You were having your book with you, and we were meeting at a friend's to go down to see Mickey Singer at the Temple of the Universe. And what a great experience that was. It was so much fun meeting you and sharing that experience with you with listening to Mickey Singer live and in person. That was fun. And for people who don't know, Michael Singer wrote The Untethered Soul, and we just had such a great time down there.
Yeah, I love that. I had just come back from Dubai on Monday. Oh no, sorry, on Wednesday, and we left on Saturday morning. And I was a no until the day before that. I was like, you know what? I don't know how much longer Homeboy is gonna be doing these. Like, I don't want to miss out on, and our mutual friend, we are gonna stay over the night and then pretty much camp out at his house, then go the next morning. So I'm so happy I did. I just so loved meeting you, and the experience was so great.
It was a great time. But, it was just such a thrill to meet another author of such a wonderful book. I have it here because you autographed it for me. It was so cool.
Yeah.
And what an awesome idea. I told you when I met you how exciting it is to just see just such a modern, young, fresh take on ancient wisdom, which is being able to silence our way to the life of our dreams. Would you tell us about how you came on this, how you started this? Your story's really sweet.
Yeah, so I've been in personal development for over 20 years. Studied with Tony Robbins, Byron Katie, spent time in India with Sai Baba. So I've always had a sensibility for these kind of studies. But it wasn't until my parents' passing from cancer, pretty much back to back, within a 3 year apart, that I dove deep into the work of Dr. Joe Dispenza, which he focuses on epigenetics, right? Which is a study of like what stress does and what it can detonate in the body, whether it's neurological diseases or cancer. And what I learned was that, genetic diseases are like genetic genes for predisposition diseases are like Christmas lights. You can have all the Christmas lights in your house, but as long as you're not turning them on, you're fine. And what turns them on is being in a constant state of fight or flight stress. So that became the book. The book is an invitation for all of us to focus on how we speak. So we're not triggering ourselves to parasympathetic states so often. Nothing wrong with a little stress here and there to get things done, but it's just that 70% of our life stress that studies are shown that we're living in, that's what the problem is. So we don't have to live that way. We could actually reset our nervous system so we are not abusing ourselves and not spending so much time stressed out and essentially triggering some possible life-threatening diseases.
You said that so eloquently, so beautifully. There a couple of words that you use that are so popular right now. One is the trigger. We don't have to live in a state where we're constantly triggered. We don't have to live in a state where we're constantly under stress, even when we have a high stress job or a high stress environment. If we're a caretaker to someone who's ill, I had to do that with my son for a while, and I know that stress can build up, but through silence, through meditation practices, through breathing, through different methods, we can release that and reset our bodies, moving from that sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system, moving from, fight or flight into rest and relax. And so that's what you're guiding people to do. That's your mission.
Yeah, yeah. I invite people to actually consider that those triggering factors, whether it's our health or our children not doing what we want them to do, or money in the bank or our partner, are actually our opportunities to scale our emotion and to really find emotional autonomy in life. So we're not at the mercy of you're having a good day, you're happy, you're having a bad day, you're sad. What if we could essentially live in the eye of the hurricane and have peace no matter where we go? As long there could be chaos around us, but we can actually be at peace by the story of how we narrate our life, by what we say about the things. Reality can be reality. Your neighbor can be the way he is, and it's not the way he is that's affecting you. It's you thinking that they should be different. That's what creates the stress, is the resistance to reality. And by the way, that's not condoning reality at all. Like, if you got to move out, you got to move out. But how are you helping the situation in being in a constant state of anger about your neighbor being the way he is, or your kid, or your health, or your boss, or whatever? Of course, I take a deep dive about this in the book because acceptance certainly doesn't mean condolence. Actually, acceptance means that you understand that things are the way they are now, and now you can take some strong action into the path that you want.
Mm. Yes, inviting people to feel empowered from a place of where their power resides, which is within that calm. You said the eye of the hurricane. I love that. We're both in Florida, so
I know. I don't. I take for granted that some. I feel like everyone's gone through a hurricane, but the reality is most people probably haven't. But for us, you know what it means. There's peace in the eye of the hurricane. It's such a trippy experience, right? Because you feel like you're in freaking the beginning of The Wizard of Oz, hearing the winds, and then they stop for about an hour and a half, and then they pick up again when you go through the back of the hurricane. So what if we could essentially live in the eye of the hurricane? And that's the metaphor that I use. But how that looks in when we extrapolate it into our life is, what story are you telling about someone that's not doing what you want them to do? Because you're telling the story that they don't like you, or they think you're not good enough, or you think, but maybe what if you told a story that you don't know what's going on in their personal life, you don't know how they were raised, you don't know what problems they have at home? What if we start telling different stories that bring us to a softer place of emotional states?
Hmm. Just telling a different story puts us in a different state of being.
Yeah.
We can be curious. We can say, I wonder what that story is, instead of making up the story that they're not giving us time, or they think that we're blah, whatever the story is. We can just be curious. We can not know. That's an interesting place to be, isn't it? I don't know what's going on. I think I'll just sit here not knowing.
Yeah, I love, Elizabeth, that you said that, because really not knowing is the only really true state. whether we're telling ourselves a good story about someone or a bad story, we'll never really know. That's why you might as well pick a good one and have a good life. But I think being in a state of I don't know is so powerful, and it's the only real true state.
Well, tell me, how did you get to, um, you told this story of just wanting to understand how our epigenetics works, which is what is above the genetics, what turns them on, what may keep them dormant. How did you find that path? How did you go from, I'm going to say, like India to Joe Dispenza?
Yeah, I think, a lot of people ask me how long I've been working on the book, and I honestly, it's been 20 years. It's just Dr. Joe Dispenza, almost like he was the last dot that connected all the dots, right? Because I feel, in fact, that I dedicate the book and the method to Byron Katie and to Dr. Joe because they've both been, and not that Tony Robbins wasn't so impactful, or Marianne Williamson and all these people, or Abraham Hicks that I've had the honor to work with and study with them personally. But I think I really identify with the concept of when you fight reality, you lose, and always. And what I love about then Dr. Joe's explanation is really going into the science behind the brain in our survival mechanism, who's very innocently just trying to make us survive. But the mic drop irony is that our same built-in alarm system that's trying to take care of us by making us watch CNN or Fox News to know what's wrong is the same mechanism that's killing us because it's stressing us out. So it's trying to keep us safe by keeping us informed, but it's killing us because we're too stressed out by being too informed. So we have to figure out a way to really balance out our nervous system so we're not so in attraction of survival conversations, whether they're gossip conversations or complaining conversations. I call those survival conversations. They're connected to the amygdala that crave that kind of, is like, if I'm meeting you up, if we're meeting up today for a conversation, I'm like, hey Elizabeth, how's it going? You're like, I'm really struggling. I'm gonna lean in because that's you're giving me a survival cadence. So it's very normal and it's juicy and it's entertaining. And then you'll tell me about your day, and then I'll tell you about my day, and then I'll walk away and be like, oh man, she has it worse than me. Or I'll walk away like, wow, I love how Elizabeth gets me, and we have this rapport, and we really open up to each other, and nothing wrong with that. But I open up a query of, do you really think you got it off your chest, or did you indulge in your emotional addiction of complaining together? And of course, after a fix of heroin or whatever drug, you feel really good, right? You're high. But in 2 hours from now, when your body starts detoxifying from it, another bad boss is going to come and do that same thing again. So you can jump into those cortisol level states and have that roller coaster ride again. So the book is a lot of common sense of, like, if you knew that describing your boss as a nightmare keeps you experiencing him as a nightmare, would you still do it? Are those 15 minutes of banter with your coworkers worth the 9 hours of hell that you experience every day?
That is the magic right there, is that if what I hear you saying is that if we could ask ourselves, how am I creating my boss as a nightmare? By talking smack about them 15 times a day, or every time another employee talks about them, I'm gonna agree. So I'm creating that, but we don't think we're creating that. We think that's what is, and we're just commenting on it, but we're adding to the creation of that every time. And if we just would stop and ask, how am I creating my boss today? How am I creating my wife today? How am I creating my kids today? Oh, and here's a good one. You touch on this through many aspects of the book. How am I creating myself today?
Mm.
How am I beating myself up in so many habitual ways? right? You talk about that. You invite us to ask some questions to ourselves, how we're talking to ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. I think inevitably how we see the world is how we see ourselves. So the more that you think there's flaws out there, the more that you're gonna find them in you. And how that works, it's like, and I love my friends and those have come, the ones that have come and gone, whether they leave the physical realm or we're out of communication, they'll always be with me in the only place they ever really were, in my heart. And I have a lot of compassion and empathy when I walk into conversations and there's that one friend that's always talking smack about everyone, because I know that when everyone leaves that room and there's no one to attack, they start attacking themselves. So I actually feel a lot of compassion and empathy when I see people doing that. Plus, for me, it's not really fun anymore for someone to give me gossip about somebody else, because I know that the minute I turn around, they're doing that about me. So it's kind of like, well, it's almost like I'm awake to it now, and nothing wrong. I don't judge it. I just
No.
not that interesting to me. I'd rather talk about ideas and philosophies and what are you up to in the world. And one of the chapters is called "We're not news. You're not a reporter." We're not news reporters. Like, stop pretending you work for CNN. It's like describing the world, and let me tell you this. And it's like, you could,
Yes.
but I think that we're at a very blessed time where there's so much information out there of these kind of studies. Your book, your way of living, to Elizabeth. Like you and I have the same language, and Dr. Joe, we're all in this big buffet, and we're all different flavors of this beautiful buffet. So I think it's wonderful that people have so many different options as far as their spiritual growth and their emotional scaling.
When I see the tagline of your book, silence your way to the life of your dreams, there's something really miraculous. You mentioned earlier, whether you're telling a good story or a bad story, it's when we're not telling any story that the magic really happens. And you touch on that in the book. It's this in the silence. So sometimes we think, oh, I'll tell a good story, which is if you're going to tell a story, tell a good one. Tell one that lifts people up, lifts yourself up, lifts your mom or your kids or your dog, whatever it is. Tell that story. But what happens when we get to the place where we're not telling any story?
Yeah, no, that's so interesting. It's like the power of our narrative. I always say it's like lower the narrative, because we can give anything that we're looking at an empowering context.
Yeah.
I talk about I do a lot of work. I used to. I live in Miami now, but I used to do a lot of work with the homeless community in LA. And being in that environment, there's if I'm looking at them, right, and I'm thinking, oh my God, this is the worst thing that could happen, and this is disgusting, and the city doesn't care about them, and like, oh my God, then they're losing and I'm losing, right? But if I choose the narrative, right? Choose a powerful narrative over the one situation that I think universally we can all agree that there shouldn't exist: homelessness. I
Right.
think, like,
Right.
whether you're left or right or pro this or that, this is like a one that we could all agree universally that everyone should have a proper roof over their heads, So to be able to look at a situation like that and think, like, you know what? I don't know what toolbox they have. I don't know if there's some life, like, uh, contract that they're supposed to live. I don't know if they're maybe about to hit nirvana, and here I am worried about boats and cars and money, and literally they're in their last Siddhartha state of. I don't know anything, right?
I
But to
love
be
that.
able to be in that space of the not knowing, right, the no story, and to think that, if someone walks into a room right now, Elizabeth, and tells us, would you rather be helped or would you rather help? I think probably you and me would say we would rather help, right? So imagine if it's a room of 10 of us and everyone wants to help, but
Mhm.
nobody wants to be helped, then none of us would get to do what we love to do.
Yeah.
So because of that homeless person, he or she gets to give me the gift of me fulfilling something that I love, which is to be of service. So they're doing me the gift.
Yes.
So to look at things in that context, right, of something that the whole world would say this is the worst thing, and to really give it a spin, and to that's living in the eye of the hurricane. That's you choosing a narrative outside of what the news are telling you or anything. You're going, no, I'm gonna find that story that's gonna make me happy, that's gonna make the world seem fair, and I'm gonna run with this. You have the keys to the kingdom.
Oh, the keys to the kingdom. You
Yeah.
are, that's what you're talking about. That's what your book's about. It's the keys to the kingdom, one short little chapter at a time. I just love how you wrote that. I love that it's so readable, it's so relatable. I love metaphor, the eye of the hurricane, but also from a perspective of being on the ground, being in our human bodies. Like you said, everybody can kind of agree, like they if they could voice it, they would say, oh, this is terrible, this is a terrible situation, or this, whatever we want to say about it. But from that big perspective that you mentioned, that you said, I don't know what's happening with this soul. His soul may be about to reach nirvana, you said. It may be on the cusp of enlightenment. It may be, and maybe it's my soul that's about to be, just woke up in this situation, and I had to be there, and they had to be there. That's, this beautiful perspective of being able to not know, but know that in, let's call it source, or, the quantum field, or infinite possibilities, whatever we want to call that space of all that there is. It's like we don't know, but we can, but it's there's love. There's just love and creativity because we're participating in it. Like you said, what do you want to do? You want to give, and you get to give, you get to serve. That comes from love. That comes from connection.
Yeah, yeah. If it's there's been millions of songs written about love, right? And how do you explain it tangibly, right? And I think the closest definition that I've ever heard is love is allowing someone the space for being.
Mm.
It's saying you matter, and you deserve to have your opinions. You deserve to have your ways of being, and that's why in the shut the f up commandments in my book, the commandment number 10 is, before telling anybody to shut the f up, you shut the f up. And that really wraps it up in a bow, because how often do someone like you and I, right, that we're conscious people, and we go out of our way to really connect with feelings of love and empathy and compassion for ourselves and others. But how often does the beautiful tricky mind like tricks us and is like, oh no, in the name of I'm enlightened, you're wrong, or like, I'm enlightened until you don't agree with my stand, and therefore you're not enlightened, and that's like the last one, right? I have some family members that, I think what's happening right now in our culture and in the world, the political climate, the world climate, it's very exciting, because it's almost like we've graduated to this PhD of a human evolution of being able to be with these irritants, right? Let's call them irritants. We're like, maybe they were always there. Maybe we just have so much news now that it feels so much bigger now than before. But maybe it's just that the fact that we're in a 24-hour TikTok cycle and Instagram and news everywhere, and that is by default creating a bit of a mass hysteria, right? And we have to like tunnel it out. And we got to tunnel it out from people that we love dearly, like family members. And I can't just go around telling, hey, you can't call me anymore, which I've tried. I have to I have a toolbox, and sometimes the toolbox is not picking up the phone. Sometimes the toolbox is changing the subject. Sometimes the toolbox is, I hear you. Sometimes the toolbox is silence. But whatever that toolbox is, whatever that tool, that, Phillips head, flathead, whatever, wrench, whatever it is, that's the work. That's the work. And it's sometimes I'm not going to get the right tool and I'm going to be upset. And the question is, how long am I going to stay there? Am I going to
Yeah.
stay there 2 minutes or 2 hours
Or 2 years.
or 2 years?
Yeah.
So our family members, our friends, whoever's in office or whoever's not in office, is such a gift to really encourage us to really reside in that eye of the hurricane that we can do and really become the ultimate alchemizers and really alchemize our environments and purify them with love and understanding and compassion for them and for us.
Mm. Tell me a little bit more about alchemize, the transformation process of turning something as an irritant into something that is a gift for us.
Yeah, I think my, that's my this is my alchemizing hack. My alchemizing hack, Elizabeth, is that I'm not in your shoes. I can't see the world how you're seeing it. I don't have your genes. I don't have your trauma. I don't have your son. I don't have any. How could I speak on what you should feel like when I have no idea what that's like? So you could have 180 view from me, and you are 100% right for you.
Right.
And that's my hack where when I start feeling that trigger of like, oh my God, he or she goes again or he goes again in their political rant or whatever, and I'm like, why can't they be more enlightened like me? Like there's who's in office. Oh, and then the universe goes, you're not getting it. You're not getting your way,
That's
baby. You're not gonna get it. And I'm like, okay, I forgot. God is also him and her and whoever, right? So that is my thing, and then that compassion where like I'm not gonna reply. I'm just not gonna I'm gonna silence. I'm gonna let this speak.
silent.
And you know what? And if you get mad at my silence, then I have to love you enough for you to be mad at me. And that's okay.
And what I thought you were gonna say, where my mind went, is I have to love myself enough to be able to stay in my silence. Like, if that's my tool that I have to choose and you're still mad at me, it's like, "Oh, I still gotta be like, I gotta be in me what's gonna alchemize that situation for me, even if you're still mad at me or even if you're worse mad at me," you know?
Look, if they're on the warpath for you, then they'll even turn your silence into like you heartless. What you that's why you have to love them that much to respect that they are gonna hate you. And I do think if I have to choose between silence and screaming, I think the kinder thing is definitely silence. That's in my experience. But then again, I'm not you, right? You could be screaming your ass off and having the time of your life. Like again, you see how everything is just how could I, some people are out there having miserable lives. Maybe they're having the time of their life.
Yeah.
It
Or
doesn't look that way.
well, I feel like we've all met that person who's so happy being miserable.
Yeah.
Like, they're literally themselves, like, that's who they are, and
Uh,
they're so okay with that, you know? And there is something a little endearing about,
oh my
that
God. 100.
crotchety,
When
crazy
someone
person.
when we have those glimpses or those moments where they're attacking us and we think they're so freaking cute, oh, that's it. We hit nirvana. That's that,
Right.
that's what it is. Like they're attacking us, they're mad, and you don't have any agenda that they should be different. You actually think it's adorable.
Yeah.
That you win. Because that's the emotional autonomy. That's you not controlling any environment to have your own peace of mind. That's it.
Thank you. That is beautiful. I love the emotional autonomy, and I was going to ask you about that earlier. It's one of the first things you said, and it's that idea I'm gaining now. It's that there truly, when we really get what you're saying, it's that there is nothing out there, not one thing that can knock me off my, and then name what it is for you, your peace or your joy or your power or your abundance. The stock market could crash, the mortgage rate could triple. but none of it can knock you off who you are unless you allow it to. So the emotional autonomy is being, um, what would you say? Being, I don't want to use the word in control, but choosing
being independent, being independent
independent. Ooh,
of your emotions. And listen, and these aren't things in my experience, right? I always want to inject in my experience that we can on a conscious level control, right? If someone comes right now and just cuts my arm, like I can't tell you, I'm gonna be like, why did you do that? You know what I mean? But I do think that our level of rewiring our subconscious like triggers, right? Whether it's engaging in conversations like this, in addition to meditating, in addition to breath work, all these beautiful modalities. I do think like someone doing something like that will probably not hit at a 10, but it'll hit like in a 4. I'll be more solution driven, right? There's an accident. Instead of like freaking out, I go, it's hospital time. We got to go to the hospital. In that way, I'm accepting reality. And I'm also I so got this from Byron Katie. I'm just so much more efficient, right? Because being reactive is actually being really inefficient because you're screaming, you're doing all these things instead of going, okay, what are my options? What do we got to do to solve this? That's how, by doing these modalities, these practices, I think like it's just good news all around because you're either going to stop being reactive or you're going to be reactive for a shorter amount of time. And when you do get reactive, you're not going to give yourself such a hard time and feel all that guilt and like make yourself wrong. Oh my God, I wrote a book called Living Enlightenment. I should know better than this. And my son left the socks on the table and I just one mad woman in cave. Like, what is this? Maybe you'll find that even funny and be like, oh my God, I'm the author of this book that has helped thousands of people, millions of people, and I'm going nuts over a sock. Then you start laughing, right?
you can tell that's me.
Hypothetically.
I love, this is a little side note, but just because you brought it up, it just makes me laugh. I tend to think of, I- and I'm so blessed to have had this experience. I tend to think of my ego as sort of this child, like a toddler. So when I hear my ego throw the tantrum, it's just so funny to me. It's like, oh, that's so cute, that little toddler throwing a tantrum over not being able to have the second piece of cake or something, whatever it is. It's just like, that's so adorable. And then I'm like, wait, that's me. Okay. Stop
And,
throwing the tantrum now.
there's I think there could be more humor and like look, yesterday I went to my friend's building. And it's like this building where like I was already kind of triggered because the valet, I was like, this is basically a parking ticket. This just got like freaking $20. I don't care about my friend that much to pay $20 for 2 hours. Like I was so triggered. And I'm like, wow, these are core beliefs about money and expenses. Again, I'm like Neo in the Matrix watching me. I'm like, wow, this is my cheap side's coming out. I love it. I love it. Like that side of me that doesn't believe abundance could, be a 20-hour, 2-hour valet thing. Anyway, and then my friend gave me the wrong he gave me this notebook, but it wasn't mine, so it was his. And like I went to give it back to the security guy, and the security guy's like, no, you're gonna have to wait for your friend to come down. And I just grabbed the notebook and I go, forget it. And I left. And I was such a baby about it. I gave him like a really dramatic, I go, you know what, forget it. And I started that, and in my head, I'm like, he's probably looking at me like, what an idiot. And it's okay. Again, like I had a moment, and then no one got hurt, no one got cursed at, no, you know what I mean? But I can be in my childness and be like, wow, man, I really gave him a show. And it's okay. It's
It
okay
is okay.
about these things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then being, the practice, if we really have engaged in some of the practices that you talk about in your book, then even what happens is that, like you said, the timing is a lot shorter that we're throwing the tantrum,
Yeah.
and the love that we're giving ourselves, it's like we're not stuck for another 2 days blaming ourselves for having a tantrum in front of those people. Like, what did they think about me? It's like, it's just so done. Like it's there and it's done. I think it was I think it was Eckhart Tolle, who tells a story about watching the ducks and like one gets upset at the other and they go after him, rah, 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 and then 2 seconds later they're all swimming peacefully and diving for grass and eating grass. In other words, it's just done. It's not holding a grudge. It's not beating ourselves up or someone else. It's just done. And there's something so healing about that because even if we got into our sympathetic nervous system, that fight or flight, that the blood pressure goes up, the tightness comes, we're just out of it again. We're breathing and laughing. And I love that you said humor because I
Yeah,
definitely try to do that with myself and others. Sometimes
yeah.
it's not appreciated.
Right. I remember I was in LA. It was like a Friday afternoon after work, and I was walking on the sidewalk, and I had a backpack on, and there was a guy walking towards me, and he had a backpack on. And I remember I was thinking of the sidewalk. I'm like, well, this isn't big enough, so he's gonna have to move. And then I thought, well, he's gonna have to move. And then I see that he sees me, and he must have had the same thought, because I didn't move. It was like playing chicken. I wasn't moving. He wasn't moving. And then we crashed into each other. And I looked at him and I go, dude, you were supposed to move. And then he goes, no, you were supposed to move. And then we just paused and we just started laughing our ass off. And I just started cracking up. And I was like, have a good weekend, man. And he's like, you too, buddy. And like, those moments are so precious. We have, by the way, moments like that, moments of serendipity, of joy, of laughter, like, don't let them just slip away. Like, acknowledge them, because the reticular activating system, once you clock them, you start seeing them more and experiencing them more. So the whole book is the shut the F up method, but it's actually a Trojan horse. It really is: speak up about the things that you want, the things that make you happy, the things that bring you joy, and silence those conversations that give you stress. Those are the ones. And like I said before, it's not repression either. It's just mindfulness. Like, pick your therapist, pick your best friend. Tell your best friend, Elizabeth, you're gonna be the only person that I'm gonna tell this. When I tell you that, your listening for me gets so tuned up that I'll probably sort myself out just from telling you the story without you having to even give me any advice. That's what happens as people when we bring our listening in. So the book is just these wonderful hacks that can just allow you to go deeper into a more pragmatic and peaceful process.
I love that. And if you got to present this, which you are all over the world on the stages, what is the one thing you want that audience to walk away with knowing or wanting to experiment with?
Uh, Somebody asked me a question, that it was, if everything that I've ever done is lost, right?
Mm.
Everything that I've written, everything that I've said, and the only thing that I could keep could fit in a billboard, and
Mm.
just a one statement billboard, what would it be? Right? And when I told the story, I got so moved that I started crying, and it's still, I still think it's the one, and it is, you're doing it right. You're doing it right. And by the way, you're doing it right is just, if you're here, you're freaking worth it. You're freaking worth it. You're here. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And that doesn't mean, and by the way, and by us knowing that we're doing it right and we're worth it, then we're going to start seeing people that way,
Yeah.
and we're going to start looking for how they're right. And before we know it, you know, me thinking that I'm doing it right doesn't mean that I don't get to perfect my craft, or be someone that loves and cares and makes better decisions after seeing something didn't work. But I know that it was a mistake along the way, and that I'm still doing it right no matter how it looks like. We're all, the last chapter is called Imperfectly Perfect, and it was a really great realization when I did it, because that's what I called my parents earlier on. And I called everybody's parents that. I have a whole ode to parents, because I think that no matter what your relationship is now with your parents, they were the people that made sure you didn't die multiple times. And just for that alone, we have to honor how imperfectly perfect they were. So I think that we're all imperfectly perfect, and the only metric of perfection is the reflection in the mirror exactly the way it is, both inside and out.
Mm, you're doing it right.
Yeah.
And you said, I think you were talking about your reticular activating
This,
system.
yeah.
That and it is that the one where it's like if you buy a car and you see that car
Yeah.
everywhere, if you make that decision, then the world starts to reflect the decision that you make. But if you don't make that decision, in other words, if you're standing in what you believed about yourself before, that you're doing it wrong or that everyone else is doing it wrong and you wish they would do, it's like then we will see that. So we're creating. It goes back to the conversation about creating. How are we creating ourselves to experience life? And
Yeah,
every decision we make is we're going to see.
yeah, I think we're gonna be right about whatever we think we're right about. So what do you want to be right about? Do you want to be right about the world is a scary place and it's going down on what, like, with hell in a handbag? Or do you want to be right about the fact that I don't know, but I know it's going to work out in my favor. And I know that every single hardship that I've ever had was part of a beautiful tapestry that gave me the muscles that I needed to get. So the world hasn't failed me yet. What makes me think statistically is going to start now? Does it make sense?
Wow. Oh my gosh, that was so deep. That is just awesome. It's really beautiful. I think people have a lot to look forward to in reading this book. And how else are you out there in the world? Do you have a coaching program? What's going on with that?
Yeah, yeah. Right now, I'm starting to put together some retreats and workshops. I'm doing one in Portland next month, and I have a private coaching practice, one-on-ones, and right now I'm just doing a lot of speaking, a lot of promotion for the book. You got, you were so gracious to allow me to change this a couple of times. I'm in the middle. The book is now in Spanish, El Método Cállate la Boca. So I'm in my Latin press tour here in Miami. I feel like I'm in that show, the morning show with Jennifer Aniston, but it's the Latino morning show. So I've been doing all the Latino morning shows. It's such a funny culture, it's like 5 minute like radio live interviews, and it's like it's just I so much more enjoy what you and I are doing right now because it's like two people really bouncing ideas. And I tell you this, Elizabeth, for anything that I've said today that you think was wow and really powerful, that's because you were the clearing for it.
Mm.
So you create the space for these conversations to emerge. So it goes back to you and who you are as a clearing for people and for consciousness.
Oh,
Um,
that's
and
beautiful.
and I so much more enjoy these kind of the other ones are great. There's beauty in everything, but this is my jam.
Well, I love that on every level. I think I shouldn't say we're all, many of us on this path, try not to overgeneralize. Many of us on this path are just so excited that there's more and more people stepping up to share what they know, to share in a big way what they know. You've not just written the book, but now you're doing the book tour. Now it's in Spanish. We're kind of inviting people to play in the playground, instead of like, this is my playground. I'll just be real happy in this little space that is my peaceful, happy little bubble. It's like, wow, there's other people that are right there looking for the happy, peaceful little bubble that is their playground. And we're all just calling to everybody in every language, in every culture, in every tradition. And there's a background of this silencing our way to the life of our dreams in every culture, in every tradition. So it really is a universal phenomenon that I'm seeing and experiencing. I just interviewed Tom Cronin, who's in Australia, and people from all over the world and the UK and different, just, it's like you said, we're all on this big buffet of being in love, being, oh, what did you say? Emotional autonomy. Sorry,
Yeah.
that took me a few moments. To know that there is nothing that can take me off my center unless I allow it to, and come play, let's all play, let's play with this.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I do, in my experience, you know, conversations like the ones we're having, reading books like yours and mine, and listen to your soul, then, breath work will all of a sudden become intriguing, or sound bath or sound bowls, or meditation for me, right? I never leave my house without my morning meditation practice. It's just, even if it's 5 minutes, I have to set myself up. I believe in energy so much. If I have to, it's almost like brushing my teeth. I can't face the world without my teeth being brushed, out of consideration for them and my teeth. And that's the same way I feel about that practice that targets the subconscious mind, that allows me to be in a state of wholeness, so life can happen. And instead of me getting mad at the traffic, I get to actually feel proud of myself that I'm basically in a parking lot and I don't care, and I feel like I'm in vacation. And that's the real power, right? Like, getting what you want is easy. Feeling good when you're getting what you want is easy, but not getting what you want and feeling good, that's what, man, that's the work. That's where you like pat yourself in the back and like, oh my God, I can't even recognize me. Like, I am the work. I'm living, I'm putting my money where my mouth is. And that's a lot more valuable than just getting what you want.
Oh, I love that you said that. I love that you said that, that the real power, yeah, we can always be happy when things are going our way. That's great. Good for you. You can be joyful during that. But what about when it looks like they're not going your way? And then yeah, that peace is still within, that poise, that and that brought me back to that moment where you said the solutions are there. When things aren't looking like they're for us, somebody sliced our arm, or we fell and did something, or the car accident on the 401, whatever it is. It's like the solution comes. In other words, I don't have to be knocked off my center, ranting and raving, upset and blaming. I'm in solution mode. It's like, call this, do this, phone him, be there, walk over there, call your mom. That's it. That's beautiful.
Yeah, yeah. I think, I think life is just this big preparation for death. I think, like, and when I mean death, I don't mean just the big one. I think we're born to let go. We let go of, we're born, we have to let go of our youth, we have to let go of some dreams, we have to let go of our parents, and eventually we have to let go of this body, right? And turn it in and be like, "Oh, sorry about the dent on the left," and we turn this thing in. And in the process of letting go, I think that that's where life will bring all these incredible lessons, and I do think I believe it. For me, I think that the universe first whispers to learn the lesson of letting go. And if we don't pay attention, it gives you a nudge. And if we don't pay attention, it gives us a bigger nudge. And, how do you want to learn letting go? Do you want to learn letting go when someone cuts you off in traffic and you're feeling love and empathy for them and you're not triggering your cortisol level? Do you want to learn it like that? Or do you want to learn letting go when your doctor calls you and tells you that they saw something on the test and you have to come back?
Yeah.
Because you will learn to let go. It's just, how do you want to learn it? And
Mm.
and that becomes the question, right? And what if we could learn things by listening to love and compassion, and that way, and it doesn't have to escalate a bigger level. I have one of my mentors is this woman that lost her daughter when she was 10 years old in a car accident. And I read about this in the book. And she said, no parent should have to lose their child on an accident when they're 10 years old to learn the lesson of letting go. Learn to let go when someone cuts you off. Don't let it escalate a bigger level. And
Wow.
it's obviously something that's really raw and powerful and humbling. And, before my mom died of cancer, she told me that that it was a privilege for her to have had the cancer because her whole life she was always like, "Oh, I'm too scared to do this. I will never do that." And at the end, I told her, I'm like, "You ended up being the bravest woman I've ever known." And she was, and she is, and again, soul contracts, agreements that we'll never know, but for some reason that had to be her path, and I honor it. And I don't demonize cancer or any kind of diseases. It's just different paths that that we all have to go through individually sometimes.
There's so much that is profound in all of that. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a chapter called "You Need an Irritant," and it talks about how diamonds are born through the irritation of the earth's mantle and rock, and just like diamonds have to go through that, we have to go through irritants. And a life of getting everything we want is a life of no internal muscle. And at the end, one we have to remember that our heart is a muscle. Our heart is a muscle, and the only way a heart grows, a muscle grows, is when it breaks, right? The little tears. So the more the heart breaks, the bigger it will get.
I'm going to tell you this. I've never told anyone this, even though some of my spiritual teachers probably recognized it. Some of my audience probably recognizes it on some level, but I have resisted so much that idea that we need an irritant or we need some sort of challenge, problems, things like that to grow. I have resisted that for so long. And what's so interesting though is everything is coming to show me that there was they built a dome at one point with, and what was it supposed to be, on like a space dome or something, where people could live, and it had the environment inside, but there was no wind, there's no hurricanes, there's no tornadoes because it's under a dome, right? And they found that at some point, like the palm trees and trees would just fall over because the roots weren't strengthened into the soil. There was nothing, they didn't have, they didn't learn to resist anything, so they would just fall
Huh.
over. And like, it's just like, that's not even a tree, to not develop roots and the strength to hold itself up. And I'm really coming to realize, I've known as a personal trainer in a past life that, yeah, muscles grow when you tear them, and they do not grow. They atrophy when you don't add use your word, the irritant, and they atrophy. They die because they're not expanding, they're not growing. And it really is looking at life as what is coming into my world to allow me the grace to grow, you
Yeah.
know? It's
Yeah.
really a beautiful way of looking at things, and I'm coming around to it.
Yeah. Love it. Good for you.
Absolutely.
And to add to what you're saying, maybe that irritant could be at a 2.
Yes, yes.
Maybe it doesn't need to be a 9 or a 10.
Well, that's what you were saying, is how do you want this, can you grow with a constant 1, 2, or 3, or do you need the 10 to show up
Yeah.
and really do this thing in your life? It's like, no, I'll take like going to the gym. I'll go to the gym a couple times a week, 3, 4 times. I'll do it as a practice, as a habit. I'll open my eyes to what is inviting me to grow and change, rather than ignoring or repressing or denying until it has to show up as a 6 and then show up as a 10. I
Yeah.
love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. No, I I agree. I agree. Let's keep those 2s and 3s, you know? Let's use this beautiful toolbox that we have and all these different toolkits and all these different modalities, and really build a life of our dreams. And I think it's available. We're very blessed, and I think your audience, when they see this, and throughout this the information that you put out there, you're giving them really great tools.
Well, and everyone I meet, especially you, especially this book, especially at this time, it's just perfect timing. So I just want to invite you, is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, I just wanted to share that it's been a privilege to sit with you. I'm still a little like loving our same lighting.
Like
So
we
cool.
decided we're in the same house. We're like at the same lighting, same
It's
setup.
so cool. And I just wanted to acknowledge you for creating such a beautiful space to have this powerful meeting of the minds. And thank you for playing with me. And I will be your co-player whenever you want. And let's stay. And this was fantastic.
Thank you. And what's the best way for everyone to reach you and to check you out? And I know your book's on Amazon. What else?
My website is stfumethod.com. And in there you can find the merch. You can find the schedule. You can book an exploratory call for me for coaching. You can watch podcast, anything. My whole world is there, and my Instagram is at Jorge Perez Jr. I'm very active on Instagram and TikTok is Jorge Perez STFU, and that's it. And I think that's pretty much it. And thank you for spending this time with me. You and whoever decided to watch this really great episode.
Well, thank you. And I thank our viewers absolutely because they're just allowing for themselves just that extra nudge, that extra invite to silence their way to the life of their dreams, picking up these tools and engaging with us in these conversations that are moving them and each of us into that space of love, more joy, more compassion, more power. It's empowering. So I invite them to like this and come back each week for a new insight into how we can love our life even more and live our passion even more and just laugh, love, and live enlightened every week.
Beautiful.
Every day.
Okay. Amen.
Thank you.